pause there before I popped into existence. How's everybody doing today? Happy Friday as I'm recording this. You may or may not notice a little bit of a rebranding. I'm giving it a shot. I'm going to see how it goes. Normally, this is the OSR Reddit Roundup. Still, for the moment, it's going to be a lot of Reddit rounding up and probably a bunch of OSR in there. But what I've been thinking on multiple levels about this, a lot of the stuff we cover is interesting, not just in an OSR way. Even if the question ends up coming up on the OSR subreddit, oftentimes I think we end up in really good discussions, find some good stuff that isn't necessarily OSR. And I was wondering if that more people might be intrigued by something if we didn't limit ourselves to OSR. If I didn't say in the title, this is OSR like it's OSR only. I think a lot of times it's not, and then maybe some more folks might check it out, and hopefully, I guess, get some use out of this stuff, and not just dismiss it if they're not in the OSR space. And kind of like I've mentioned in some different occasions that as much as, especially in the OSR, in that kind of in related subgenres or RPGs, it feels like it's everywhere. A lot of people don't know it. So I was thinking, well, how can I maybe make things a little bit broader so folks who are finding this on or searching on YouTube and whatever places may have a chance to come in and hang out and join us and get in some good conversations, who either see OSR and because they're not playing OSR just flick past, or they just go like, what is OSR? So we'll see how it goes. And then the other thing I was thinking of is, Reddit is going to be probably my primary driver still of topics, but I would love to open that up to other sources if folks send me stuff. All kinds of other things. I would love if folks send me questions and comments that I could cover. Maybe I can pull things out of comments on various videos as they come up. If someone sends me something or tweets me or something else, I could pull it in there. It's like, well, it's hopefully potentially in the future maybe more than Reddit. So why call it just the Reddit Roundup? So that's kind of where I'm going. We'll see how it goes, but it's going to be the same. It's not changing too much from where we were. I put a link at the beginning of the stream to I'm using a multi-Reddit. I use a multi-Reddit. I'll just flick this up here again. You can go to it. It's reddit.com/user/hexedpressman/m/RPG roundup, all one word, / if you want to play along from home. Ian says they should add some of these to their multi-Reddit. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to tweak this somewhat, because there's a lot of kind of D&D in some of these, and I was just going through kind of quickly. I took out a lot of stuff, some stuff that I'll look at on my own, some maps and different things, and I thought I'm going to get rid of a lot of those because they don't, in this format, I know we've talked about and looked at maps a little bit before, but I don't find them that they're particularly fruitful topics for us when people are just posting a bunch of maps, or or like the earth porn type channels where it's type subreddits where I like them from inspirational purposes, but for discussion purposes, they're just kind of, they're what they are. So this is a work in progress, but it's a good place to start. And speaking of that, why don't I just go ahead and pull it on screen here? You can see I have a bunch of different multi-Reddits. I'll give it a refresherino. Hey, Brian Smith getting Taco Bell and popping in the stream. Well, hopefully the stream doesn't hit you downtown from the Taco Bell. Good luck and enjoy. Let's see what we have here. Okay, so there's a and here's the other thing, right? There's gonna be more. You're probably gonna run into more of these. I don't see that much when I'm on the OSR, right? But all of a sudden, I can see already there's some promotional posts that get. I guess Reddit is just, hey, Reddit's got to make their money. But I'm gonna skip over some of that. I'm gonna skip over sword designs. So I'll give you an upvote. DMs. This is posted to the D&D Next subreddit. DMs, what is something your campaign has that you're at least 90% sure no one else does that makes it better than the others? All right, I'll give it a click, but these are kind of not the posts that I'm really into. There's no better. It's how are you going to say your campaign's better than somebody else's? And let's see. His description of this is any person, place, thing, hell, even an event that your players didn't cause that is positively unique to your campaign. And here's, I guess, an example. Your campaign may be cool, but does it have a converted Bone Devil priest that runs an ossuary temple? Okay, I don't know. Jaffro Boy says plays regularly, but I'm bummed. Oh, that was good. Yeah. And the other thing is too. So here's the other thing about Reddit. If you're someone who has been very nervous, or you look at Reddit and go, I don't want to be out. What do I want to be at Reddit? Uh, the more you curate and be thoughtful about the communities that you just read, observe before actually committing to or participating in, the better your Reddit experience will be. And I found that when you get these huge subreddits like the just R D and D or just D and D, is you're gonna get a lot more, what is it, like chaff in there and just stuff, right? Just people just posting nonsense, people posting their own kind of jokes. I think when we're starting to look into some of these broader groups, and I may trim some of these out of here and just go to the other one. That's the kind of part of what I'm going to see is if there's a bunch of just not really useful, helpful topics, and there's not a bunch of helpful stuff inside those topics, as much as it is fun to see some of the humor, like Jaffro Boys, what makes your group unique as we play regularly, I will probably split them out. And there's all this stuff like getting into who's the best, what makes yours worth playing, that kind of, I don't know, measuring your worth on some weird metric like that is kind of goofy. I'll give you an upvote, but Jacob Awesome, 74. I'll pass. I'm not sure I'm going to keep the Unearthed Arcana stuff either. I guess I'll look at this one. I guess it's just art. A lot of these I'm not into. I think I saw this the other day. It's called Flint and Steel. It's on the Patreon Abyssal Brews. I don't know. I'm just not into these. I mean, I think if this is the kind of thing you like, I think you'll like this. It's got a cool art style. I'm not sure what this bubble is supposed to be at the bottom. Looks like it's like cheese or something. Is that? I don't know. And it seems like it's a flint. It's some kind of gun with an axe on the end of it. I kind of like the blast marks here on there. It's very well done. It reminds me of something I would find in some video game art or something. But I don't know. In general, these things they don't get it. Is that the cheese? Flamethrower and axe, a throwable flamethrower, all in one. I guess is that cheese? Well, then I guess it is a cheesy axe gun. Well, there you go. Flint and Steel. I don't know anything about silvery barbs, so I'm going to pass. Take an NPC, leave an NPC. I will pass, but seems like fun. Nipple what? Swords of the Serpentine. Do I have to be wary of a death spiral, or is it not an issue? I'm not sure. I made a pirate-inspired monk subclass for D&D. Yeah, I think I might have to. I think I might have to get off the homebrews and stuff because I'm not. And of course, folks, you guys let me know what you prefer to see. I'm not a big, I don't have anything pithy to say about someone's homebrew, pretty much. Certainly not in the 5th edition sense. Didn't have time to prep. Okay, here, this might be good. So this is homebrew that's kind of DM related, so maybe I feel more kinship with this. It's posted to did they blank off D&D? Just DM toolkit. Didn't have time to prep for your session? Have your players visit Cirque du Horreur Fantastique. Cirque du Horreur Fantastique, a fun outing for the whole party. For days we watched as the giant floating bloatworm approached the walled city. We weren't sure what it was at first. I still recall the panicked talks of arming the ancient dragon ballista. By the 3rd day, however, we could see gay festival flags trailing behind the worm, suspended in the air from poles and ropes. The city's relaxed. No raider or warmonger would fly such bright and vibrant colors. Well, that's where you were wrong. By the 5th day, we could make out joyous music accompanied by the sound of fanfare. That was the day the hippogriff riders were sent from the bloatworm to scatter thousands of notices over the city just before sunset. Come one, come all, come visit Mr. Araroa's Cirque de Horreur Fantastique. Mr. Araroa's Cirque de Horreur Fantastique is a floating circus grappled and tied to the underbelly of a grotesque bloatworm. The circus is home to strange and terrible curiosities from all over the 7 continents and beyond. The owner, Mr. Araroa, is a small humanoid creature with pursed lips and large blind eyes that still somehow manages to see everything. Together with the others in his employ, they travel the world, spreading news and, to quote Mr. Araroa, curing curiosity. I definitely like the this. I don't know what a bloatworm is, but it just has such a vivid, disgusting image to me. Is it meant to be that these bloatworms float on their own, or has it been filled with kind of magic helium to make it float? Here's and with that, I shall take my sip of what is this? Iced tea, hibiscus iced tea for the working man. Mr. Hobbs says, "You can't tell me what OSR and what isn't." Very true, Mr. Hobbs. And then Brian Smith says, "The more specific the group, the better in terms of Reddit." Yes, I agree. The more specific you get, the smaller the community, in a sense, right? There's probably some. It's probably even been measured what the critical mass you need for a Reddit to kind of a subreddit to be sort of self-sustaining and not just kind of empty. I don't know what that number is, but you kind of want to find stuff in that range. Brian Smith says, like a big worm balloon. It makes sense. It does. I'm just curious if they've, tamed this worm that just floats in the skies, or whether they magically or scientifically or whatever kind of made their own giant, like a air balloon. The Circus Acts. While the circus has many wonderful acts, like the drum dancing illusion routine performed by a troupe of Tawayanji elves, that's something that goes to a Patreon post. The circus's true claim to fame is the collection of weirdlings brought back from beyond the veil. Sagnoir the Eternal. Sagnoir is a weirdling from beyond the veil. His tubular, cucumber-like body is covered in writhing tentacles. Each tentacle is in turn covered in thousands of tendrils that curiously poke, pod, and retreat from the surrounding environment. Kind of cool image. Part of Sagnoir's act involves inviting a member of the audience and handing them an axe. The volunteer is then instructed to chop off one of Sagnoir's tentacles. The volunteer is assured that Sagnoir feels no pain. Authors note, this has never been proven beyond the reasoning that Sagnoir doesn't flinch or scream when his limbs are chopped off. It is worth mentioning that Sagnoir has no mouth and therefore cannot scream. I like that note. That was very good. Well, no one's proven that it hurts him. He doesn't scream, but then again, he can't scream. Terrence says they came in on writhing tentacles. Well, Terrence, you got to come in somewhere. Might as well come in on writhing tentacles. Once severed, the limb falls to the ground and disintegrates into wispy smoke, only to regrow instantly on Sagnoir's body. While entertaining for a certain sadistic demographic in the audience, what follows almost always grabs the full audience's attention. Who amongst you would like to attain immortality? A tool similar to a tree tap is introduced and used to trickle drain stomach fluid from Sagnoir's body. Swallowing these fetid stomach juices is said to cure all diseases while giving the drinker immortality. To date, no one has been able to disprove this claim, not for lack of trying. Drinking the foul-smelling, otherworldly stomach contents causes the drinker to convulse and vomit uncontrollably, expelling the fluid and voiding the promised magical results. By look or by design, this has allowed Mr. Araroa to continue selling vials of Sagnoir's stomach contents for 200 gold pieces each. These vials of immortality are filled with a sticky brown and purple fluid labeled with the inscription, "All that can be gained can only be gained at a price." Well, I do like this. It has a very much a your sort of Barnum, P.T. Barnum kind of thing. Hey, if you can manage to drink this and hold it down, you'll gain immortality, but nobody can actually hold it down. Therefore, whether it does or does not grant you immortality is an open question, which means that people will keep trying, because who knows? You might be the one to actually swallow down and hold onto the juices. I do wonder if there would be some clever magical trickery to kind of make it happen, and I suppose then you could prove whether is or is not, in fact, a real thing. A cacophony of melodies. People of the surface, those of you who are misunderstood and shunned, described as hideous, unpleasant, or unwanted, those of you who feel more comfortable hidden in the shadows, this next act is for you. This act involves another weirdling from beyond the veil with more tubes and tentacles connected to a floating translucent bubble-like membrane. Before starting, the master of ceremonies ensures that each member of the audience receives a jar of burrowing slugs suspended in thick jelly. The audience is instructed to remove 2 slugs from the jar, 1 for each ear. The act continues when the master of ceremonies directs a beam of bright light onto the weirdling. The creature then responds by wildly flailing its tentacles and tubes in the air. Hot air is excreted from the fluttering tubes, causing them to vibrate and whine at different pitches, mimicking the awful sound of wailing and screeching. Your ears, dear people! Put the slugs in your ears! Anyone brave enough to plug their ears with the burrowing slugs is in for a surprise. With the noise being filtered through the slug acting as a filter for the ear canal, the cacophony of wailing and screeching becomes a pleasant, enchanting melody. Anyone hearing the music enters a shallow trance of introspection. They usually learn a fundamental truth about themselves and snap out of the daze feeling relaxed and inspired once the music stops. I do like this one quite a bit. I think the one thing is there's no, it'd be nice to see if there's something mechanical to go along with these. So what it would mean, because the idea is, hey, if you're sending your party in to do these things, well, okay, so the first one presumably no one can swallow it, but I'd like to see give me a table, give me something to say, okay, if your party does this, maybe they make a save. If they succeed or fail by this much or that much, maybe they get some different effects that are temporary, but always the stuff comes up. And then for this cacophony of melodies, I like it a lot. They call them burrowing slugs, okay, but do they actually burrow or do they sit in your ear like a babelfish? They sit in your ear like a babelfish, I don't have a problem with that, but then say that, because I'm thinking with burrowing slugs that they're going to just keep going, and maybe does that mean something? Because my first instinct was, Wrath of Khan type these things going in your ear. And again, we have a positive effect of some kind of fundamental truth or something, but maybe what might that be? What might learning a fundamental truth be? Get a permanent +1 on your wisdom, but maybe you can only get it once. What does it look like? And yes, of course, I can figure it out myself. But hey, if you're going to go through the trouble, just take that little extra step. Hey, Gashrin. And then Brian Smith says, what happens if you listen without the slugs? Yeah, right, because if without the slugs, it's all wailing and screeching, dude, does that do something negative for 12 hours, 24 hours until something else happens? Just flesh it out a little bit. I said flesh. Mr. Araroa. Mr. Araroa is a soft-spoken, small creature with large, glassy eyes. He's blind, and yet that doesn't stop him from missing anything. When dealing with him, something always feels off. The way his blind eyes always stare directly at your forehead. The way he intuitively knows your secrets, never revealing them outright, but always hinting at them. Like all mortals, Mr. Araroa is not immune to aging, and he can be seen walking around the circus grounds with slow, intentional steps and a mischievous smile. The days of him crossing the threshold into the veil are in the past, and he no longer has the fortitude to hunt weirdlings. Here again, right? I like this a lot. It's got great feel. It's got some great atmosphere for this character. But give me a little bit more. Like, what is he? I think they seem to suggest he's not human and not dwarf and not elf, something else. Okay, so what is Mr. Araroa? Does Mr. Araroa have certain abilities? Again, is there something he's got? In terms of, like, if this is written for 5th edition, especially, if players are going to be sitting there and want to hit their perception, all their different skills they're going to rattle off, and or potentially doing something like I want to check if they're lying, I want to see if he's lying or telling me untruths or something. So in that case, some statistics, some kind of stats for those skills would be nice. If he's got some special abilities, it'd be nice to know, because if I'm role-playing Mr. Araroa or I have him in my campaign, granted, of course, I can always make this stuff up myself, but I like to know what that intention is of the author. Well, what does Mr. Araroa do? What can he do when he's looking at your forehead? What does that mean? Is he using some kind of special power, or does he just have forehead sense? What is it? I don't know about behind the veil and weirdlings, but that I don't mind. Just kind of, I can, because I can just think of metaphorically what those things would mean. But just give me a little detail on Mr. Araroa. Terrence says, going to end up like the blue-lipped guy from the old D&D movie, evil brain tentacles living in your head. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, maybe Mr. Araroa has some kind of little host inside that's the real Mr. Araroa, and then it's going to leave and then enter something else. Enter you. Maybe, like, again, like if you drink that liquid and manage to hold it down, do you become Mr. Araroa? Like, that could be a really crazy thing. And so you gain immortality of a sense, but you're going to be the shell, and this creature is going to hop off of this guy into you, sort of thing. There could be all kinds of really fun stuff to do, especially if you're going to run this as some kind of one shot. But it has to have a little bit more about, well, how do these things not necessarily factor together if you're going to run them linearly? Because I like the idea that you could have different tents or structures, and the players could pick what you want, but just a little bit more about some, some practical ideas of what these things are doing. Brian Smith is like, what would a perceptive or insightful character pick up? Yeah, and if Mr. Araroa is trying to prevent such insight, then what would they? How good are they at the deceptive parts? What's their perception? And even though I can make it up myself, even just having the numbers for me would just give me an idea of how well the author thinks they can be. So if they had a perception of 5, let's say, I was like, okay, well, obviously Mr. Arrow really is blind. He's got a 5 in perception. The stuff with seeing foreheads is just a ruse. Okay, I get it. Or if he had a perception of 25, even if I'm not paying 5th edition, I could see that and say, all right, translating that to OSR or something else, like, okay, he's going to be really hard. If I could translate that into some kind of X and 6 chance of whatever, then I could translate it. But not having those things leaves it just very gray, like, what kind of his deal is. So we have some plot hooks and ideas, which is good. First one is called A Penny for Your Kingdom. King Leojardus has been cursed with a strange plague that has been eating away at his flesh. He has heard rumors of the healing properties of Seg Noir's stomach and is desperate enough to try it. He hasn't been able to acquire a vial after Mr. Araroa was mocked and disrespected in the king's court. Never mock Mr. Araroa. Perhaps a band of opportunists will step in and procure a vial on behalf of the king. They'll have to convince a suspicious Mr. Araroa that they are not agents of the king, knowing full well that King Leojardus might react in anger should the cure not work. Will the cure work? If it does work and the king becomes immortal, will he usher in a new era of peace and prosperity? Or will he become the next big bad evil guy? Yeah, and this plot hook is really cool. It just begs the question, if Mr. Araroa at this point is going to be the subject of having to lie and deceit, then you want to have some mechanics around how you're doing that, whether it's in an OSR kind of X and 6, or whether you just give some stats, or whether it's in a 5th edition sort of perception X, insight Y, and intimidate Z kind of thing. But I do like that plot hook. Next plot hook is entitled Help Wanted, Willing to Pay. Mr. Araroa has grown old over the centuries. He is no longer an impulsive risk-taker that hunts beyond the veil. His body might be tired, but his mind is willing. He has located the nesting ground of a wondrous otherworldly creature, but he needs someone to capture and return the creature. The pay is significant, but it comes with a caveat. Rich dead men are still dead. Can't spend gold without a body, and anyone brave enough to cross the threshold will have to return in one piece to reap the rewards. To complicate matters further, this is the Veil, and there is no shortage of weirdlings with strange abilities. Perhaps the creature they are looking for is, in fact, a shape-shifting demi-horror in search of a guiding hand to help it cross the threshold into our world. So another good one, though, the bit about, rich men are still dead. I mean, that's true of any adventure. You don't have to go across the Veil. If someone's going to pay you to do something dangerous, it's dangerous. And of course, yes, if you don't come back alive, you don't get that reward. So it's not like going across the Veil. Maybe it's more dangerous, but it's not like any other things your party's doing is going to be not dangerous. I mean, that's kind of the game. But still, I like it. Mr. Araroa doesn't cross over the Veil, whatever that happens to be. You can go on his behalf. And then finally, Eco Ariers on the horizon. The only nuisance to a floating circus is sky pirates, and the only thing worse than sky pirates are eco-ariers. Mr. Araroa has learned that a group of animal-loving, tree-humping, sock-smoking, unemployed idealists want to free the misunderstood weirdling in his care. Will they succeed? Will someone intervene? And if free, will the weirdlings go about their business in our world? Will they adapt? Or perhaps they might convey gratitude by helping the rescuers into the next life. I don't love this one so much. I think you could do without the let's poke fun at I don't know, eco warriors or whatever you want to call it, your Greenpeace, PETA, whatever activists. I mean, I'm not a member. It doesn't personally wound me, but you just don't need. I feel like you don't need to go there. I like the idea of pirates, And the pirates, I think, is better because you can have more fun with what are they going to do with the weirdling? Is someone else forming a competing circus? Do they want to free it or are they going to take it and then threaten to drop it on some city for ransom? Like, there's just a lot more possibilities with that, and then you avoid this. I think it's not, it's not a good, I don't know, eco warriors, because I want to avoid just saying eco warriors up front. It's come on, do better. But if you take out that stuff and you just put sky pirates, and you could have the questions about what their aims are, what do they want, what are they trying to use it for, who's employing them, were they sent by somebody else, kind of thing, that'd be great. And then this part about the weirdlings, since we don't have any stats about these weirdlings or really anything about their abilities, we just have the kind of fiction. How will we know? I mean, what does that mean? Go about their business in our world, or adapt? Adapt to what? Adapt with it. We don't know what they need, what they want. This is where having some details, and I'm not necessarily saying I need to have a. You need to draw me out as super detailed, monster stat block, but you could give something, right? Give a, and maybe and this is definitely at least pointing in some ways to this individual's Patreon. So it's possible on their Patreon that they're and we'll go check it out just to be nice, since they did post this. Patreon will have more details, but I think if you had more of those in these, I think that would help out these plot hooks a little bit. But all in all, it's very cool. A lot of really great flavor. I like that there's not that this is truly a neutral space. Oftentimes these circuses and things are often used for kind of carriers for sort of evil, right? There's some kind of ploy. Oh, they're going to get in, and then it's all kinds of crazy stuff that's going to happen. And these are like evil folk in disguise. But this case, no. I mean, he really is. Mr. Araroa is on the level in terms of just providing entertainment. And there's just, because of those different acts, there's some different possibilities. And then the plot hooks aren't about Mr. Araroa as some kind of evil person to be stopped. It's just they end up being a factor in these other things going on. Either A, they're holding on to something like that third one. They've got one of these weirdlings, and so of course they might need your help with somebody trying to take it from them, or he needs you to go on he becomes a quest giver, or he becomes the kind of the subject of a quest. I think I really like this first one the best, because there are so many ways you can have fun with it, and ways it could go. From once the party takes on the quest, they could go to Mr. Araroa and be honest and say, listen, the king, da-da-da. But of course, Mr. Araroa probably will not accept that if they go that way. But they could try to deal with it. Say, look, I know the king mocked you. He's super apologetic. Here are these gifts that we're going to give you on the king's behalf. They could try to run that kind of game. They could run the game of trying to deceive Mr. Araroa into giving them a vial, or finding somebody else and in between person, I forget what you would call them, an intermediary to do it. Then maybe the intermediary decides to do something on their own with the vial, so runs off with it, because it is, in theory, a very powerful reagent. There's lots of different opportunities for fun, different ways you can handle it. Of course, it'd be nice to know some stuff on Mr. Araroa and their ability and his abilities and whatnot, if the party's going to be potentially working against them, or at least in opposition in some sense to them. Brian Smith says it's pretty flavorful. It is flavorful indeed, and an excellent job. And so we've already this new approach has already borne some fruit, because this was on the DM toolkit. And I guess the one nice thing about it, in the way that this is all written out, is it is completely system neutral. So you can hack this into whatever system you want with ease. Oh, and I'll go check out this Patreon. So this is the Napkin Dungeon Masters who posted that. And let's see. Okay, so this was from 2020. I'm not going to read this one, but it's cool. So if you want to find more about this, if you like this and you maybe want to support the author, it's the Napkin Dungeon Master. They're on Patreon. And let's see, their tiers got as low as $1.50 per creation. Okay, what else have we got? What else have we got here? The College of Prestige. I'm not interested. If somebody's interested, I can come back to it. Let me know. Okay, so I'm starting with that's for RPG generators. I'm going to skip over that. So we got a battle map. I'm going to skip over that. Oh, this one from good old OSR. F mark from V. Okay. Oh, this up, they deleted it. Well, so much for that. F mark from V. This ought to be a spicy wilderness encounter. Well, we'll check it out, I guess. Oh, it's just a picture. Give an upvote. Gazan Bane, the Drow Druid. Stat block, sneak peek. There is no. Where's the sneak peek? Okay. This is where I got to figure out. Here we go. All right. I hope this doesn't get too goofy. So this is D100 plus stupid, sexy, cryptid / monster generator. When I see the sexy part, you know, actually let me open this in a new tab. I just hope that they mean that kind of just in a funny way and not that there's going to be, you know what I mean. I hope you know what I mean. I will post this in the chat. Did that go? Brian Smith says, queue up Busty Loch Ness Monster. Yep, this should hit the chat. I think I put it in there. There we go. You can see it real quick. This is at unlawful.games /2021 /11 /D100 stupid /sexy or -sexy -cryptid -monster -generator.html. Interesting they posted this. Is this just because it hit that hot tab? It's a year old almost. Submitted 9 months ago. I guess because maybe this particular subreddit is not very well trafficked, but it's new to us. So this is the stupid, sexy, cryptid monster generator. Stupid, sexy, cryptid / monster generator for all those people who want to date the Mothman or Venom or biblical angels or Nessie, I guess. Yeah, this is not me. I don't fall into that group. I don't fall in that circle in the Venn diagram, but let's see. Anyway, so it uses different die types, and there's basically a number of questions. The first one, which is a D2 because it's just a yes or no question, is can you date them? And the answers are yes. And then the other answer is capital yes. Because, of course, it doesn't seem to make much sense if you couldn't date them, I guess. They have a preferred time of day. They're a morning monster. Twilight, ooh, so dramatic. Only comes out at night like the rest of us. Or the unknowable spans of the 13th hour. Their temperament is either shady B, mischievous gobbo, shy, small, angry but hot, beautiful but stupid, intense all the time. And their theme is analog, horror, urban legend, old folktales, cosmic monstrosity, alien, modern mythology, liminal nightmare, and body horror. And then some gifts will show up if you look in a mirror and say its name 3 times while spinning clockwise. They like beauty products. If you stand on the haunted bridge at the right time, you can hear them cry, give them a jar of your own tears. Alternatively, tissues with lotion are nice too. I'm going to stop after those. These are actually kind of clever because they're playing on your sort of folklore stuff and just giving a little twist. Where is it from? They've been here all along. The stars, another dimension, the dreamscape, an unholy union between man and monster, an escape lab experiment. You kind of get the drift. And then some common features. They're faceless, or they're chimerical, or they're kind of in that uncanny valley, or everything is too long, so many teeth, huge meaty tongue, so on and so forth. We have some common abilities: possession, hypnosis or mind control, selective invisibility, precog or prophecy, telekinesis, dream manipulation, and then some quirks that are a D100, so I'm definitely not reading all these. Really big, like holy-ish, kaiju-sized. How has nobody found them yet? I like that. Itty-bitty, they can fit in your hand. Their presence dims all light sources, and there's a bunch of these, including some of these have subtitles like they feed primarily off of, and then you would roll for fear, orgone, blood, delta waves, the static in your television, literal garbage. You know, these tables are really good other than, like, I don't care about the, like, what do they love, but just coming up with a monster, I think there's some fun stuff. So they have expanded environments. You can roll for plains, swamps, rivers, all that kind of stuff. And then the size from insect to unfathomable. And they also have a Patreon, the lawful neutral. So this is, so, you know, I came in here skeptical, and certainly the the first three of these tables are a bit. I mean, preferred time of day is kind of funny and does not particularly anything. The temperament one, it's a little bit, too kind of giggly for me. But once you get down the theme and then the rumor and then the kind of down, I mean, you could literally just come up with a regular monster. You would not have to play it like some kind of joke. Oh, I'm playing a data monster weird anime manga game. As Ian says, very tongue in cheek amongst other things. Yeah, but I think it's actually could be a useful table. You could just roll selectively. If you want to have the date a monster element, you can certainly do that. But I think you could take that out and you still have a pretty interesting folklore sort of monster generator. So a little bit of gold hidden in there that I was not expecting. That was the D100 plus super stupid sexy cryptid / monster generator. I'm gonna have to look at these submitted dates because I have this. I'm guessing this. We can open up. I'm guessing this Reddit is kind of dead or somewhat dead, or is just because the new. Yeah, see, 9 months ago. All right, RPG tables, I'm gonna have to get rid of you because you just don't want to be. No RPG tables. Goodbye. Okay. First post in a long time by the Tactical DM on. All right, let me get rid of the Tactical DM one because that one, I forget why I had this in there to begin with, but it clearly is not active. Here we go. Here's something might be interesting. So this is posted to the 3D6 subreddit, which I can never figure out. I think I put it on there originally because I thought it was an OSR type subreddit, but I think it's not. I'm not exactly sure. I should probably just go there. But this one it is not super old. Should be useful. This is called Don't Build Like an MMO, the most common mistake for 5th edition, posted by Natural Card to the 3D6 subreddit. Ian says, are behind the tables. That's really active. Okay, cool. I'll come back to that afterwards and I'll add that one in. Or maybe I'll add it in after we read this. Don't Build Like an MMO, the most common mistake for 5th edition, posted by Natural Card to our 3D6. I built and helped build far too many characters, and if there's one thing that I've learned that's been most helpful, it's to try not to make characters as though they were in an MMO. Trying to follow the classic quote-unquote party roles and only caring about how good a character is at their quote-unquote job is incredibly limiting and has even led the entire community to underrate many subclasses and even classes. So, what do I mean by all this? Basically, in 5th edition, it is much more effective to have a character that is good at a bunch of things at the same time than to have a character that is slightly better at one thing. Look at 2 clerics, for example. The first uses Spirit Guardians, using their action to Booming Blade with advantage from Find Familiar, and then uses their bonus action to telekinetic shove someone into Spirit Guardians for an extra chance at damage. The second skips the entire Blooming Blade combo and just takes Res Con and uses their action to dodge. For damage, at level 5, assuming 3 enemies, and they've done a whole bunch of math I'm not going to read, over, I guess the first example does 47.5 damage. The second example, which is the simpler one, does 43.1 damage. And so they put all that together and say that doing all that other stuff just only gives you a 10% increase. Now let's look at defenses. The second cleric is on average hit 50% less, is crit 95% less, and loses concentration 57% less. All of this together will make them last almost 5 times longer. 10% damage increase versus 400% defensive increase is the result of not focusing on damage. Similar results happen when you look at other classes, like Paladin and then he, I'm not even up on my abbreviations. I see Great Weapon Master. I'm not sure what PAM is. But anyway, he's suggesting that you'll find these same sorts of relationships when you look at other classes. Just picking one role is severely limiting your character. But if you shouldn't pick any roles, what is important to have in a party? Really, there are 3 things you need: support, control, and damage. Utility can also be useful, but it's so campaign dependent and easy to cover with spells and backgrounds that focusing on it is often a waste. Support is buffing your allies. Some of the strongest abilities in the game, like Aura of Protection and Twilight Sanctuary, focus on this. This is why before Peace Cleric existed, Paladin was considered almost necessary. Not having your action economy crushed by one suck or save effect is critical. Control is stopping enemies from taking their actions effectively. With standard save chance, a hypnotic pattern will take out about 60% of the enemies in a fight. That means that they are stopping enemies from dealing 150% more damage, which is understandably massive. This is arguably the most important part due to just how effective control effects are in this edition and how well they scale, with even low-level spells like Entangle and Web still being very relevant at higher levels. Finally, damage. You need damage to kill things, and the best parties will have good damage, but it is slightly less important than control die to just how easy it is to get access to, as every class has some repeatable source of damage. Even a party of 4 wizards just casting Firebolt or Toll the Dead will kill enemies that never get any actions. There is also defense, but unlike an MMO, it is much more effective for each player to invest a little bit into this rather than have one PC try to do all of it. This is because of how easy it is, especially for spellcasters, to become almost impossible to hit with just a single feat or a 1-level dip that gives them other things they want anyway. Giving a full analysis of 2 of my recently played characters. Alright, so he's got some details here. I'm going to skip. So one of them is a Shepherd Druid 8, Divine Soul Sorcerer 1. And got 24 armor class without magic items, as well as a con save proficiency, favored by the gods, lucky and silvery barbs. Had fantastic control with plant growth and sleet storm, as well as conjure animals blocking stuff and providing half cover. Good support with good berries and pass without trace for surprise, as well as various conjure woodland beings summons. Fantastic damage with conjure animals. Now another character was a Kensei Monk 6, Battlemaster 3, 16 armor class, no other good save effects, no real control, no real support. Fantastic damage with focused aim plus key fueled strike plus action surge plus maneuvers plus archery plus sharpshooter plus a musket. Beats level 3 conjure animals but not level 5. Overall slightly higher on damage than the druid. Which do you think was more valuable? So to summarize, the next time you are building a character, think about investing slightly less in your focus and more in everything else. A small investment, especially for defense and damage, can make a massive difference. And then we have an edit. Because people are misunderstanding this, the main point about the clerics is that both are damage focused as they are concentrating on spirit guardians. One cleric chooses to specialize more into damage, the other chooses to get better defenses instead, and as a result of not specializing into more damage, is more effective, because the small investment they made into defenses pays off much more than the investment the other cleric made into more damage. So that's a lot. Let's see. Brian Smith says, once somebody starts doing these deep dive comparisons about specific chains of actions and scenarios, I feel the urge to jump off a cliff. If this dude was telling me how to build my character for a game, I would likely never come back to that table. Well, I think ultimately what this person is saying, and I've said this before, I don't have the mathematics to back it up, but I've said it before that I'm not a huge fan of the ultra specialization in characters. And I think as GMs, as rules, I don't want to really encourage specialization because I think it leads players down these paths that are ultimately not as fulfilling as they think. And it also kind of can box you as a GM if you come from this approach that you have to tune everything to the players. And usually my example for this is, Grappler, the Grappler. If all they can do is grapple, then what happens if I want to throw ghosts or spirits or something at the party because, I want to do this, that, or other? If I have to make sure that I can appeal to Grappler, who the only thing they can do is grapple, well, then I either have to make sure that they have magic items so that they can grapple things that are that don't have bodies, or I have to have something have to have that body so they can be grappled. Like I have to start changing things, or I have to live with the fact that Grappler, the Grappler, may feel like I'm targeting them unnecessarily, or why does this GM hate me? He won't let me grapple the specters, or he's filled this dungeon with specters, ignoring the context of, well, hello, you're investigating a haunted house. You're going to find ghosts and specters and poltergeists in there, kind of thing. And then from a player standpoint, if you're limited, if you're all you have is this one thing, you're all you can do in combats and everything else is just that one thing. And then, you have no ability to rebound on your feet and do things if that one thing is taken away for reasons, even if they are your reasons that you've made yourself. You may have invented, because of what you've done, consequences that remove your ability to do something. I can only use two-handed swords, and then you get captured by the enemy. You don't have your two-handed sword with you, and all that's around are one-handed sword and axes, and suddenly you're completely ineffective. That's your own bed. You have to lay in it, but I get the frustrations. So that's kind of how I come out of it. It's neat to hear. I'm going to assume from the moment all the math is correct, that sometimes some of these folks that go off the deep end optimizing are optimizing for that 10%. Of course, they may argue that 10% is really worthwhile because over the course of the game, that 10% or maybe even just the course of a battle, that 10% is enough to take down an extra enemy. So let's say, hey, it's worthwhile, whatever. But there's an interesting point here about maybe in terms of the community, the way folks do with optimization, that they're going a little bit too far and they aren't thinking about what they're giving up when they're adding on that extra. Because yeah, when you read a lot of posts, you see all things about all the max damage they did, or oh my gosh, I could do 5 million damage in a day. But that doesn't really cover the fact as well. If you hadn't done this stuff, you're doing 4,990,000 in a day, and then maybe, yeah, you would have better defense and better other things you can do, and you wouldn't be just a one-trick pony. You don't usually hear that side of it. You really just hear about that. Look at this upper end. You look at this maximum that I've got, and maybe you lose a bit of, well, what did you then minimize because of it? Which is the thing I pointed about the min-max. You know, they don't even usually call it min-max anymore, but at least when you called it min-maxing, now I think it's called more optimization, at least in that name, it was saying explicitly that, yes, you are maximizing one thing by minimizing other things. And I think sometimes that part of discussion, dialogue in the kind of optimization character building game sort of has gotten lost. Like, yeah, what are you giving up to get all this stuff? To get those oodles and oodles of damage? Let's see. Nightbot came in. Good going, Nightbot. And Brian Smith says, shouldn't super specialized characters just die if they can't handle diverse situations? Seems like it should just sort itself out over the course of a few characters. I mean, that would be the Darwinian, right? The Darwin Society approach or the Darwin Awards approach. I don't think players tend to see it that way. I think, and I'm building straw men, and I'm speaking for the community, and in a way I get it, right? But I think the discourse I see often revolves around that it's up to the GM, and I think this is part of why I don't like the spotlighting thing, right? The GM should be spotlighting, the GM should be kind of rewarding players for all the choices they make. Seems to imply, and I think players even will say it explicitly, that you shouldn't be, you know, why are you harshing my vibe, man, by having me not use the two-handed sword that I've planned my whole character around, right? You know, you'll hear things like, oh, the GM has the whole world, and I just want my two-handed sword guy. It's like, okay, but I never said that you should take a two-handed sword and nothing else kind of thing, or you should be flexible. That's part of the, you know, adverse situations, kind of part of the thinking on your feet, that cleverness. But I think depending on your table and community, you might not have that. I mean, me as a GM, I haven't DM'd 5th edition in a long time, and I'm not sure I'm likely to anytime soon. But if I did, you know, part of building characters in my games anyways, we're going to kind of talk through it a bit. I would certainly see somebody, if I saw they were going down the road, or they told me it's like, oh, I'm going to make a guy and he's going to be the super specialist with this thing, I would say, you know what? Let's walk back the super specialist bit and do something different, because I can tell you now, I'm not going to change the world for you. And if you decide to make yourself super specialist in some weird weapon, then you lose your weird weapon. Every store isn't going to carry your weird weapon because you have it. You're not going to find it in the next treasure pile just because you have it. I'll add it to the mix or I'll do whatever, but it's going to be chance like everybody else. So if you lose it or something happens and you can't do it, then maybe have some backups. But I don't know that a lot of folks have that conversation. It's kind of one of those things that should probably be more of a part of the session zero, is that what kind of characters are applicable and what you're encouraging and not at your table. I mean, this is going kind of beyond and off of what this person's saying, but just, you know, for me anyway, I'm going to highlight the fact that in my game, being able to be diverse, being able to be flexible is key, and that you shouldn't over specialize. I'm sure there's going to be some counterpoints in here. Orange Punk says your 2 clerics example does not support your point. Doing more damage more quickly is a form of control. It removes enemies from the battle. Taking away enemy actions altogether is more effective defense than reducing the odds that those actions succeed. And then Gravion Bell says, I was confused by this too. The cleric that has Booming Blade and Telekinetic is the one that is good at a bunch of things. The Spirit Guardian's Dodge cleric is the one who's super hyper focused. I don't think either is necessarily better. Some people like versatility, and some people like to be really, real good at a thing. But I'm pretty sure the examples don't bear the OP's point. And then Orange Punk says, yeah, tactical choices ultimately matter much more than these minor build choices. Anyway, versatility is good for that reason. And then Natural Card, who is, I think that's the OP, says it's a fairly simplistic example of the point. The cleric focusing on damage more is more specialist compared to the cleric that is focusing on both damage and defense. I don't know, he got downvoted. I don't know why. And then 123 mop is kind of backing up Orange Punk's point. Attempting to take away enemy actions can be a more effective defense than reducing the odds they succeed, but it depends how likely you are to take away their action. That damage increase is not all that likely to take their action away, so the defense boost is generally a good choice considering it has essentially no investment of character features. If the best control spell was Stinking Cloud, you wouldn't have people saying control magic is the best. It's the best because the options for it are some of the most powerful among spell options, like Hypnotic Pattern and Fear. And then Orange Punk says, yes, the tactical choice is more important than the build choice. Sometimes dodging is a good idea, even if you have Booming Blade. And then they were downvoted. The other thing with these bigger subreddits is the kind of weird, I got to downvote stuff I disagree with, or downvote because I'm angry, or downvote because I've had a bad day. You get that more and more. I mean, I'll see it in stuff like OSR, where I'll see stuff that I post. And not that everything I post should just be upvoted to the heavens, but, stuff I post like, here's a thing about here's a video I made. And you may like it, you may not. Or you may interest you or may not. But I would just see weird, like, all of a sudden it would just take some downvotes. And I can never understand where they're coming from. They just downvote. It's like, okay, can you at least tell me what's so offensive about what I've done? But it's definitely more prevalent in the larger subreddits. All right, there's a whole bunch of talking about that. I'm more interested in some other. Woollybo says, I got to agree with the herd here. While your conclusion is right that people, especially those new to the game, routinely build like they're playing an MMO and end up with bad builds as a direct result, the examples you use in overall argumentation are just not very good. I'd rather focus on the specific mistakes people make and do analysis of party comps overall with 3 generally competent characters focused on the most important things D&D characters can do versus a party with one each of healer, tank, DPS characters, since that's really the MMO mindset, not min-maxing specific things. And then Natural Card says that's fair. I definitely could have thought more about the examples. All right. So it seems like maybe a lot of people don't actually agree with it, though it's gotten a bunch of upvotes. I can say I think I agree with the sentiment. I just think that over specialization in RPGs is bad, and I think it's bad for characters, and I think it can be bad for GMs to the point that I just think as a rule set that I would use, if I was using a rule set that had hyper specialization, I would look to remove it or strongly dissuade my players from taking it. Or certainly if I was playing in a custom system, I would limit the amount of specialization. I don't mind a little bit. Like, I don't mind somebody playing, let's say, Robin Hood, who's excellent, is very good with a quarterstaff, excellent with a sword, and masterful with a bow. But at the same time, that Robin Hood, if given a dagger, if given something else, would be competent, right? They've got a little bit of that, like, yeah, I'm the master of the bow, and I'm also excellent with the sword, but maybe a little less good. And then maybe my third weapon is the quarterstaff, and then everything below that, I'm kind of competent. Like, that to me is okay. But when you go from I'm the master of the bow, and then I'm garbage at everything else, like I could be master of the bow, I start to think maybe that's not a great idea. What happens when you can't use your bow? And then the answer often becomes, maybe the GM should never have me in a situation where I don't have my bow because that's my one thing. That's kind of where I was talking before when that one person says, this is some people like to be good at that one thing. Well, there's kind of an implication there. The GM should never, ever, take away that one good thing. And of course, they shouldn't do it just to do it. Oh, I'm going to take it away just to take it away. But at the same time, if consequences and things happen, then they happen. And just like the example with the ghost, if I had a player who was bow specialist and they didn't have a magic bow yet, if they're going to investigate a haunted house, do I have to gift them with a magic bow so that they feel better, or give them a bunch of +1 arrows, or do I have to make all the ghosts in here somehow hittable with arrows, regular arrows, because this is what this player chose to be their one really good thing? And then if each one in the party has their one really good thing, then like what kind of weird things do I have to do? Okay, so this person's grappler, so everything has to be grappleable. This guy's got the bow, so everything has to be hittable with arrows, and everything has to have some kind of range. They can't be in a situation where they can't use their bow. And then this person's got this other thing, so nothing can be immune to fire because they decided to concentrate on fire spells. After a while, the GM may have the world, but that world can find itself being constricted. Brian Smith says it's the best defense is a good offense argument, or the best offense is a good defense argument. Yeah, I think where you are in the game, that 10% might seem good or bad. And I think there's certainly an argument that over the course of a given combat, if that 10% equals you doing an extra 50 points of damage, meaning that over that course of that battle, you're taking out potentially multiple more enemies than the other person is, and the extra damage that you're not getting isn't killing you, then maybe it makes sense. I mean, it's a complicated thing, but I just think in general, I would go with, yeah, don't over specialize. So we've got a Stone Hell map, dungeon map for VTT, which I won't go into, but I'll upvote it. Feeling isolated from a large part of the hobby. This is back in the OSR subreddit, so let's take a look. Okay, so this was posted by Mid-South Mystic. Feeling isolated from a large part of the hobby. I'm not sure if this should be considered help or discussion, so I rolled a d6 and let it decide. I love the OSR. Since I first discovered it through the Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG, I've considered it to be my home in the TTRPG hobby. The weirdness and creativity of the community makes me happy in a way that little else does. But while the OSR is huge and growing by the day, we don't make up the majority of the hobby by any means. For around 10 years, D&D 5th edition has dominated the tabletop role-playing game hobby in a way nothing else has before. I know a lot of people here love 5th edition and play it in an old school way, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, I am not one of those people. It's not that I'm just disinterested in 5th edition, I actually dislike it rather strongly if I'm being honest. For me, 5th edition is frustrating, and running it is like pulling teeth. To me, it feels both like I'm playing 3.5 with half the rules missing, and like someone added a bunch of rules clutter to 1st edition AD&D. That said, I am not here to start an edition war, but I did need to explain my issues with 5th edition so people understand where I'm coming from. If you like 5th edition, I am not trying to insult you or say your game is bad. We all have fun in different ways, and it just so happens that what's fun to you is the opposite of fun to me. Neither of us is wrong, just different, and that's okay. Getting to my actual point, this aversion to the most popular edition of the game yet has left me feeling isolated from most of my local tabletop role-playing game community, and in many ways the hobby as a whole. D&D 5th edition is everywhere, and it seems like everyone loves it except me. I don't think they've gone around to a lot of subreddits in different places, if that's what they're seeing. Worse, other people find my dislike incomprehensible, which just leaves me feeling even more lost and alone when dealing with the rest of the hobby. I hate feeling cut off from most of the community and treated like I'm wrong or just being contrary for disliking something everyone else thinks is great. Am I the only one who feels this way? Has anyone else dealt with this? If so, how did you overcome it? Or have I finally veered off into being the old man yelling at a cloud? Update. Please don't hate on 5th edition in the comments. I'm not here to hate on 5th edition or stop people from having fun their way. I just want to also have fun my way too and not feel wrong for doing so. Okay, so this is really a complicated thing. I wasn't sure where this was going to go, and I'm kind of glad this is it and not kind of a mental health issue that I'm totally not suited and not and have no ability to really answer in any kind of way. So first of all, for anyone, probably Mid-South Mystic, never going to hear this response. Maybe I'll post a link to this in their description. But I would say there are all kinds of different communities in the tabletop role-playing games sphere. Yes, 5th edition is the largest. OSR, I would say, is probably one of the smallish ones. There are lots of other ones. I would say that you will find more kinship with the kind of indie RPG community. It may seem weird or almost counterintuitive, but you'll probably find you have more in common with the folks playing the Powered by the Apocalypse type games and Fate and those kind of games in many ways. Just in terms of being outsiders to the main current D&D experience, than you will trying to jump into a bunch of D&D folks. So if you're at your gaming store, if you're looking at subreddits, if you're looking at meetups and you're trying to find like-minded RPG folks, and you may not find that there's anything OSR going on, I would look at those kind of indie and alternate tabletop role-playing games. You might find that you like them. Some of the things I think that may appeal to you about OSR games you might find in those games. And I think you'll find folks who maybe share more of a view of being outside the 5th edition sphere and not wanting to be inside it. Brian Smith says, the answer to, am I the only one who feels this way, is almost 100% no. Yes, it is. But I think I can see how a lot of individuals out there can feel isolated in terms of the OSR. I mentioned the story when I was at, PAX East in Boston this spring. I played, I signed up to play in this indie RPG. It wasn't Microscope, but it was kind of like Microscope, where you sort of shared narrative, build the history of a place role-playing game. And when I sat down at the table with the person who was running this game, who had who had organized it, and then the fellow folks who had signed up for it. These are all people who were really knowledgeable about role-playing games, digital space, well aware of places like DriveThruRPG and itch.io and all these things. Because this game, it wasn't even as well known as Microscope. It was something that you would really have to kind of go out of your way to find. And I thought for sure, hey, these folks will know about OSR. I mean, they're digging in the same spaces. They're looking at all these little indie games. And I think when they asked me kind of what I did, I said, oh, yeah, I run a little YouTube channel and things, and I talk about OSR. And to a person, what's OSR? They had no idea what it is. And so I can see somebody who maybe is in the ROSR and feels like there's a lot, or maybe you even see sales on DriveThruRPG and you think, wow, these games are huge. Look how many copies these games have sold. But then you go out into the world at large trying to find these people, and it's difficult. And you, depending on where you live, you might not be able to find them. You're going to see lots of D&D 5th edition, and then maybe some Pathfinder out there, then maybe a little bit less. You might find some of those kind of interesting RPG, indie RPGs and apocalypse-powered RPGs, and maybe some of the stuff that's kind of OSR adjacent, like stuff by Free League or Cubicle 7 or Modifius or something like that, but you might not find OSR. And if you're just looking for OSR and that's where your search stops, you might come and say, wow, there's nobody here doing these things. And the answer is, well, you maybe do some more digging and find it. But the other thing is maybe if you opened up a little bit to some of these other gaming systems and looked at them, you may not like those systems, but you might find people who are kind of more your speed in terms of philosophy, who may agree with stuff if you kind of broaden it out. But I was fascinated by that. Of course, mine was just one anecdotal answer. And if I went to another, I'm going to be in ShireCon in a week or so, just to play a few games. Daniel from Bayonet's Keep is going to be there. I'm going to play in his game and I'll chat with him a bit. But at that con, it's very much an OSR old school con. So of course, if I go there and ask, oh, do you know OSR? Everyone's going to know. But at PAX East, which is much more, generalist and just broad spectrum of humanity, even though these people were into indie games, they didn't know. So I see where they're coming from, but I think the thing is just ultimately expand your horizons, just like, someone who's an OSR would love if 5th edition folks might expand their horizons a little bit. And there's often a frustration, I think, that people from outside feel with 5th edition players and GMs who they just feel like even if it's not their intent, they sometimes come off, or we can perceive them as just being narrowly just nope, and just blinders, 5th edition, nothing else. I think by the same time, hey, you're outside the 5th edition box. Look beyond OSR. Look in the search for NSR stuff, that whatever new school role playing game, or whatever their acronym that they've done, or new school, whatever. Or look at indie games, look at Powered by the Apocalypse, look at Fate, look at some of these other ones, look at just different small RPGs that you might find on itch. And then if you're looking at something like Looking for Game, or LFG, or you're on Meetup, or you're in your gaming store, when you see some games you don't recognize that people are looking for people to play, try them. You may be surprised as what they are, and that way you will definitely meet people, because if people are posting for these games that are off the beaten path, non-5th edition, you know that they're going to share at least some bits with you, because if they really wanted to play 5th edition or run 5th edition, they would. So the fact that they're not probably tells you that you have something in common, and then maybe you'll discover something new. Maybe you can even get them into the OSR because they might not be aware of it. You may find some OSR friends where you least expect them, and that would be my advice. And that, I guess, is our last thing. Let me know. Give me a feedback if you're in the chat. If you have a minute, you can drop in the chat, or you can drop in the comments afterwards. Did you like this expansion? In a sense, it's going to be, if you're looking for purely OSR content, it's not going to be that, because it's going to be more watered down. Because I'm looking at a bunch of other subreddits. And as I said at the beginning, I'm hoping to expand not just from Reddit, but from folks. If you guys have questions, things to send me, or things I can dig up elsewhere, whatnot, and wherefore. I think that circus thing we looked at the beginning was really interesting. I think this was a good question. This was from OSR. There's going to be some bumps in the road as I figure out which subreddits are going to tend to be fruitful for this and which ones I need to cull. I might cull some of the big D&D subreddits just because I'd rather be more focused. So we'll see. It's going to be a work in progress, but I want your feedback, so please give me your feedback. And if you feel like giving a thumbs up as well, that would be awesome. And then if you found yourself in here and this seems kind of interesting to you, and this is something I've been doing, concentrating on OSR for a while now. Now I'm just trying to open it up a little bit to other things. This is cool, and if you feel like subscribing, that would also be awesome. Otherwise, have a great rest of your weekend or your day, night, whenever you are watching or listening to this. I guess it's not quite the weekend, but Friday afternoon for me is close enough. Anyway, whatever day or night you're listening to this or watching this, have a great rest of it. Game on, and I will talk to you later. Bye, everybody.